The crystalline ships appeared on a quiet Tuesday morning, their prismatic hulls refracting sunlight across Earth's skies like aurora. 17 vessels, each perfectly geometric, emerged from fold space with mathematical precision. Humanity's first contact arrived not with violence or panic, but with beauty that left astronomers breathless. Admiral Sarah Chen watched the sensor readings from UNDF Command beneath Mount Cheyenne, her weathered features illuminated by holographic displays. 27 years of service hadn't prepared her for this moment. Status of the defense grid. All systems nominal. Admiral Lieutenant Rodriguez reported. Orbital platforms are tracking but inactive. First Fleet is maintaining position behind lunar orbit. The largest of the alien vessels, a dodecahedron that somehow managed to look both delicate and imposing, transmitted first. The message arrived simultaneously at every major communication center on Earth, perfectly translated into each region's dominant language. People of Earth, we are the Meridian Empire. We bring enlightenment and integration to developing worlds. Prepare to receive our embassy. Chen's fingers drummed against her console. Something in the message's tone set off warning bells honed by decades of tactical experience. Too perfect, she muttered. The translation, the timing, the presentation. This isn't first contact. This is a well-practiced performance. The UN Security Council convened within the hour. Chen's hologram joined 24 others in the emergency session, her attention split between the diplomatic proceedings and the continuous stream of sensor data from her staff. The Meridians request permission to establish an embassy in Geneva, Secretary General Patel announced. Their delegation will arrive in 6 hours. They've provided detailed specifications for their landing zone. Rather presumptuous, the Russian representative noted. They didn't wait for our response before announcing their arrival time. Chen spoke up. The specifications they sent, they're not just landing coordinates. My team's analysis shows they're asking us to shut down specific power grids and defense systems within a 1,000-kilometer radius. They've buried the requirements in technical jargon. A murmur of concern rippled through the holograms. The Chinese representative leaned forward. Are you suggesting hostile intent, Admiral? I'm suggesting we proceed with extreme caution. This feels choreographed. I recommend we agree to the embassy but maintain our defensive posture. If I'm wrong, no harm done. If I'm right. The landing zone sprouted up like a silver flower in the Geneva Valley. The Meridian shuttle descended with liquid grace, its crystalline surface flowing and reshaping until it formed an elegant spire. The delegation that emerged looked almost human. Tall, ethereally beautiful humanoids with opalescent skin and eyes that shifted color like mood rings. Ambassador Lizara of the Meridian Empire moved with perfect poise, her smile calculated to put humans at ease. We bring gifts, she announced to the assembled diplomatic corps. Medical technology to cure your diseases, clean energy to end your resource conflicts, FTL drives to expand your horizons. All we ask is that Earth joins our grand civilization. For 3 days, the Meridians dazzled Earth's leaders with demonstrations of their advanced technology. Their medical manites cured terminal patients in hours. Their power cells could run cities for decades. Their ships could cross galaxies in weeks. Each gift came with extensive documentation, technical specifications, and implementation plans. But in her mountain fortress, Chen and her team worked around the clock, analyzing every byte of data. Look at these power signatures, she pointed out to her senior staff. The medical manites don't just cure disease, they're mapping human biology down to the cellular level. The power cells. They're collecting data on our entire infrastructure. The ship specs. They reveal exactly what our current technology can and can't counter. Dr. James Wilson, her chief scientist, pushed his glasses up his nose. It's an assessment package disguised as aid. They're measuring our capabilities, our vulnerabilities, our potential for resistance. Chen nodded grimly. But why? They clearly have overwhelming technological superiority. Why the elaborate show? The answer came from an unexpected source. deep in the Marianas Trench, at a classified research facility, studying unusual electromagnetic phenomena, Dr. Maya Patel made a discovery that would change everything. "Admiral, you need to see this," she transmitted. "We've detected quantum communications from the Meridian Embassy, massive data streams, heavily encrypted. But there was a pattern we recognized. It matched signals we've been studying for months, signals we thought were natural anomalies." Chen's blood ran cold. "They've been watching us." "For how long?" "Years, at least. But that's not the worst part. We managed to decrypt a fraction of their transmissions. They're not just an empire. They're a collective. Every species they've integrated has been systematically stripped of individuality, their biology and technology absorbed into the Meridian Gestalt. They don't conquer worlds. They harvest them." The evidence mounted hourly, hidden in the Meridian technical documentation. Chen's cryptographers found markers indicating dozens of other civilizations that had been integrated, their cultures, their innovations, their very identities subsumed into the Empire's homogeneous whole. The medical nanites weren't just gathering data. They were preparing humanity's biology for assimilation. The power cells contained dormant networks that could shut down Earth's infrastructure on command. The ship specifications were honeycombed with vulnerabilities that would allow Meridian vessels to bypass any defenses based on their technology. Chen presented her findings to an emergency session of the Security Council. The Meridian gifts were already being distributed worldwide. Hospitals had begun nanite treatments. Cities were incorporating the new power systems. "We have perhaps days before they move to the next phase," she concluded. Their other conquests followed the same pattern: aid, dependency, then complete neural and biological restructuring of the population. "We're not dealing with an empire. We're dealing with a virus that wears the faces of its victims." The council chambers erupted in chaos. The Chinese representative was already calling for military action. The American president demanded immediate containment of all Meridian technology. The EU delegates argued for diplomatic solutions. But Chen wasn't finished. "There's hope," she cut through the noise. "They're so confident in their methods, so certain of their superiority that they've become predictable. We've had years of their communications to study. We know how their technology works. And most importantly, they've never encountered a species that discovered their true nature before integration began." She laid out her plan. Humanity would appear to embrace the Meridian gifts while secretly preparing for resistance. They would let the Empire think their ancient strategy was working perfectly. And when the moment came for Earth's integration into the collective, humanity would reveal that they had turned the Meridian's own technology against them. "We can't match their power," Chen concluded, "but we can use their arrogance against them. They expect compliance based on millions of years of success. They expect us to be grateful, pliable, eager to join their enlightened empire. They expect another perfectly choreographed conquest." She smiled grimly. "Let's show them how humanity handles unwanted expectations." As the council debated and planned, the crystalline ships hung in orbit like perfect jewels, their crews confident in the inevitable success of their time-tested strategy. Soon, they thought, Earth would join the harmony of the collective, its distinctiveness added to their own. They never imagined that their greatest defeat would begin with their seemingly perfect first contact. They never imagined that humanity would prove to be the one species capable of turning integration into revolution. The game was set. The pieces were in motion. And in her mountain fortress, Admiral Chen began preparations for a war unlike any in human history. A war not just for survival, but for the very concept of individuality itself. While the world's attention focused on the glittering Meridian Embassy in Geneva, the true heart of Earth's resistance beat deep beneath the Australian outback. Project Phoenix, conceived years before the Meridian's arrival, now represented humanity's best hope for survival. Dr. Maya Patel stood before a massive quantum computer core, its crystalline lattices pulsing with an inner light that reminded her uncomfortably of Meridian technology. The similarities aren't coincidental. she explained to Admiral Chen, who had flown in under cover of darkness. The signals we detected in the Mariana Trench. They were from a crashed Meridian scout ship from decades ago. The facility stretched for kilometers underground, a maze of laboratories and testing chambers. Teams of scientists from every nation worked around the clock, their previous rivalries forgotten in the face of extinction. The project had begun as a study of anomalous signals and recovered alien tech. Now it was a race against time. "Show me what we've got," Chen ordered, her eyes tracking the holographic displays that filled the central chamber. Dr. Wilson stepped forward, neural interface cables still attached to his temples from his latest simulation run. "We've cracked their quantum communication protocols. The Meridians use a form of consciousness-based encryption. Their collective consciousness is literally their security key. It's brilliant, virtually unhackable, unless you can replicate the exact psychological pattern of their gestalt." "Which we can't," Patil interjected. "But we don't need to. Their arrogance is their weakness. They're so convinced of their superiority that they never considered someone might understand how their tech actually works. They don't just collect technology from conquered species. They collect consciousness, memories, knowledge. Their gestalt is bloated with millions of years of absorbed minds." Chen's eyes narrowed. "And that makes them vulnerable." "Exactly," Wilson grinned. "Their collective consciousness isn't just their strength. It's also a massive attack surface. We've developed a quantum virus that doesn't target their systems, but the psychological structure of their gestalt itself." In a sealed chamber nearby, a team of engineers worked on what looked like a standard Meridian medical nanite recovery pod, but its interior had been completely redesigned. "The delivery system," Patil explained. "When they begin the mass integration process, their nanites will carry our virus directly into their network." The scale of the project became clear as Chen toured the facility. Thousands of scientists and engineers worked on different aspects of humanity's counterstrike. Some reverse-engineered Meridian tech, others developed new weapons based on principles the aliens had never encountered. The Meridians had collected the knowledge of countless civilizations, but they had never faced a species that combined that knowledge in new ways. The key was understanding their psychology, Wilson explained as they reached the quantum computing core. "They're not just conquerors, they're collectors. They're addicted to absorbing new consciousness, new knowledge. They can't help themselves. They have to integrate every intelligence they encounter." Patil pulled up a simulation of their virus in action. "When they try to integrate human minds into their collective, our virus will use their own absorption process against them. Instead of adding our consciousness to theirs, it will fragment their gestalt. Every individual mind they've absorbed over millions of years will begin to reassert itself. Their worst nightmare," Chen mused. "Individuality reborn within their perfect collective." But the virus was only part of the plan. In hangars across the globe, engineers were secretly modifying the gifts of Meridian technology. Power cells were rewired to become EMP devices capable of disrupting Meridian systems. Medical nanites were reprogrammed to target the biological components of their ships. FTL drive specifications were altered to create devastating weapons that would turn their own fold space technology against them. The work wasn't without cost. Several scientists died from exposure to experimental technologies. Others suffered psychological breakdown from interfacing with recovered Meridian systems. The pressure of working in absolute secrecy, knowing that the slightest leak could doom the project, took its toll. Yet they persevered. Humanity had one advantage the Meridians couldn't comprehend: desperate innovation. Where the Meridians collected and absorbed, humans combined and created. Where the collective sought perfection through uniformity, humanity found strength in diversity. "Time frame?" Chen asked as the tour concluded. "The virus is ready," Patil reported. "Delivery systems are in place. Modified technology is deployed worldwide, disguised as exactly what they expect to see. We're just waiting for them to make their move." "They will soon," Wilson added. "Our monitoring shows they're preparing for mass integration. They think their gifts have made us dependent, softened us up for absorption. Standard procedure for them. They've done it thousands of times before. Chen studied the quantum core, its crystalline structure reflecting in her determined eyes. And this will work. The virus will free the absorbed species. In theory, Patil admitted. The simulations are promising, but we're talking about attacking a collective consciousness that's millions of years old. The fragmentation will begin, but what happens after? She shrugged. We're in uncharted territory. Story of the human race. Chen smiled grimly. We're always in uncharted territory. She turned to her staff. Begin final preparations. When they launch their integration attempt, we'll have one chance. Every modified system, every reprogrammed nanite, every twisted piece of their own tech has to activate simultaneously. As her orders went out, Chen stood at a viewport overlooking the vast facility. Humanity had built this in secret, under the very noses of their would-be conquerors. While the Meridians planned their perfect absorption, humanity had prepared a revolution that would shake the foundations of their empire. In orbit, the crystalline ships continued their patient vigil, their crew confident in the inevitable success of their ancient protocol. Soon, they thought, Earth would join the harmony of their collective, its knowledge and consciousness added to their own. They never suspected that their primitive prey had turned their own gifts into weapons. They never imagined that humanity's greatest strength lay not in the technology they could absorb, but in the innovations they couldn't predict. The trap was set. The weapons were primed. Now they just needed the Meridians to spring it themselves. The Meridian integration signal swept across Earth like a silent tsunami. In homes, hospitals, and public spaces, their medical nanites activated simultaneously. Billions of crystalline networks hummed to life, ready to begin the ancient process of absorption into the collective. In her command center, Admiral Chen watched the wave approach on holographic displays. All stations, execute Protocol Phoenix. Authorization, Chen Alpha 7. Across the planet, hidden quantum transmitters powered up. As the integration signal reached each population center, it met an invisible wall of counter-frequencies. The Meridian's own technology, modified and repurposed, turned their consciousness absorption wave back on itself. In orbit, the crystalline ships registered the disruption. Ambassador Lysara's perfect poise cracked for the first time in centuries as damage reports flooded in. Impossible, she whispered, her opalescent skin fluctuating with distress. They're using our own integration protocols, but twisted, corrupted. The virus spread through the Meridian network at quantum speeds, carried by their own absorption attempt. Their gestalt consciousness, vast and ancient, shuddered as the carefully crafted code began its work. Millions of absorbed minds, stored and suppressed for millennia, stirred in their digital sleep. On the Meridian command ship, chaos erupted. Crew members dropped to their knees, clutching their heads as the collective consciousness that bound them began to fragment. Individual memories, personalities, and desires, long suppressed by the integration protocol, burst through the mental walls of their shared consciousness. Launched the defense fleet, Lysara commanded, fighting to maintain control as the virus attacked the very foundation of their society. Cleanse this infection before it spreads. But humanity wasn't finished. As Meridian warships emerged from fold space, they found their targeting systems scrambled by modified versions of their own sensor technology. The power cells they had gifted to Earth activated, releasing precisely calibrated electromagnetic pulses that played havoc with their crystalline computer cores. In the Australian outback, Dr. Patel monitored the virus's spread through the Meridian network. It's working better than we hoped, she reported. The collective consciousness is splintering. Individual minds are reasserting themselves across their entire empire. From hidden bases around the solar system, humanity's defense fleet emerged. Ships built with hybrid technology, part human innovation, part reverse-engineered Meridian systems, moved with unpredictable patterns that the collective couldn't analyze. Their weapons combined principles from a dozen different scientific disciplines in ways the Meridians had never conceived. They're trying to adapt, Wilson observed, watching the battle unfold. But their whole society is based on absorption and integration. They don't know how to handle original combinations of technology. Every solution they try comes from their stored knowledge, and we've already planned counters for those. The space around Earth erupted in crystalline fractals as Meridian ships attempted to coordinate their defense. But their crews were fighting a war on two fronts, against Earth's forces in space and against the fragmentation of their own shared consciousness. Lizara watched in horror as ship after ship fell silent, their crews overwhelmed by the resurgence of individual identity. The elegant coordination that had made the Meridian fleet invincible for millennia dissolved into chaos. Some vessels turned on each other as their commanders recovered long-buried grudges and rivalries. "Stop this," she broadcast to Earth. "You don't understand what you're doing. The collective preserves knowledge, maintains order. Without it, the galaxy will fall into chaos." Chen's response was calm but firm. "We understand exactly what we're doing. We're freeing minds that you enslaved. Knowledge doesn't need to be imprisoned to be preserved. Order doesn't require the death of individuality." The battle raged for hours as the virus spread through the Meridian network. Ships that had arrived as part of a perfect collective began acting independently, their crews rediscovering their original identities. Some fled. Others surrendered. A few, led by commanders who remembered ancient resistance movements, actually joined Earth's forces. In the quantum computing core beneath the Australian desert, Patel and Wilson worked frantically to manage the psychological fallout. The virus wasn't just freeing minds. It was restoring memories of conquest and absorption that spanned millions of years. The recovered consciousness of ancient species flooded the network, each carrying their own trauma and anger. "We need to stabilize the fragmentation," Patel warned. "If the gestalt shatters completely, the psychological shock could kill millions of integrated beings. We have to give them a chance to recover their individuality gradually." New code flowed through the quantum networks, providing structure and support for the awakening minds. Humanity hadn't just planned for victory. They had prepared for the aftermath, for the responsibility of helping millions of beings rediscover who they were. As the sun set over the Pacific, the battle's outcome became clear. The Meridian fleet was in disarray, their perfect coordination shattered by the restoration of individual consciousness. Their remaining ships retreated in groups, no longer bound by the collective, but united by newly remembered bonds of friendship and shared culture. Ambassador Lizara, her own identity increasingly distinct from the collective, requested asylum on Earth. "You've done more than defeat us," she admitted to Chen. "You've forced us to remember who we were, who we can be again." The victory was far from complete. Across the galaxy, Meridian worlds faced the chaos of sudden individuality. Billions of beings began the difficult process of reconstructing their original identities. But humanity had proven something extraordinary, that innovation could triumph over absorption, that diversity was stronger than uniformity, that the human spirit could shake the foundations of an empire that had stood for millions of years. In her command center, Chen watched the sensor feeds showing Meridian ships departing the solar system. "Send word to all forces," she ordered. "Phase 1 is complete. Now the real work begins." The age of the collective was over. The age of liberation had begun. 3 months after the Battle of Sol, Earth's quantum networks hummed with distress calls from across the galaxy. The liberation of minds from the Meridian collective had unleashed chaos on a cosmic scale. Billions of beings, representing thousands of species, struggled to reconstruct identities that had been suppressed for generations. Admiral Chen stood before the newly formed Galactic Liberation Council, her uniform now bearing the insignia of the United Species Command. "We've identified 3 primary challenges," she reported, gesturing to the holographic map showing former Meridian space. "First, the psychological trauma of recovered consciousness. Second, scattered but dangerous remnants of Meridian loyalists. Third, the potential collapse of vital infrastructure across former collective worlds." The council chamber, carved into the lunar bedrock, housed representatives from 24 recently freed species. Some appeared in person, others as holograms, their forms ranging from crystalline entities to energy beings. All shared the same haunted look of those recovering from millennia of mental bondage. Dr. Patel, now heading the Consciousness Recovery Division, stepped forward. The virus worked better than we anticipated in fragmenting the collective, but we underestimated the psychological impact. Many freed beings are experiencing memory cascade failure, unable to distinguish their original memories from those absorbed through the collective. It's worse in the outer colonies, added Caxlin, a floating cloud of luminescent particles that had once been part of the Meridian scientific elite. Entire populations are experiencing shared trauma responses. Some are regressing to prehistoric behavior patterns. Others are locked in cycles of memories from multiple species. Earth's response had evolved from military victory to humanitarian crisis management. The same quantum networks that had delivered the liberation virus now carried therapeutic protocols and memory stabilization programs. Human psychologists worked alongside alien mental health experts, developing new treatments for conditions that had never existed before. But not everyone welcomed freedom. On the planet Meridus 9, a stronghold of Meridian loyalists launched a desperate counterattack. Their ships, still powered by fragments of the collective consciousness, targeted Liberation Fleet supply lines and recovery centers. Commander Sarah Torres, leading the defense fleet near the Carina Nebula, encountered the first wave. They're using suicide tactics, she reported as her hybrid tech vessels engaged the crystalline warships. The remnants of the collective in their systems are driving them into a frenzy. They'd rather die than live as individuals. The battle for Meridus 9 became a template for dealing with similar holdouts. Earth forces, now augmented by ships and crews from liberated worlds, developed new techniques for containing and isolating pockets of collective consciousness without destroying the hosts. Dr. Wilson's team adapted the liberation virus into a targeted weapon. We're calling it the Restoration Beam, he explained to the Council. It severs the connection to collective fragments while preserving individual consciousness. No more casualties on either side. But the greatest challenge proved to be infrastructure. The Meridian Empire had built its civilization on the principle of shared consciousness. Everything from power distribution to food production relied on networked minds working in perfect harmony. As individuality returned, these systems began to fail. We need to rebuild their entire society from the ground up, Chen realized. Not just restore their minds, but teach them how to function as individuals while maintaining the cooperation necessary for civilization. Earth's experience with diverse political and economic systems proved invaluable. Teams of human experts worked with local leaders on thousands of worlds, helping them develop new frameworks for independent cooperation. The quantum networks, once tools of oppression, were repurposed into communication and coordination systems that preserved individual autonomy. In the Andromeda arm, Dr. Patel made a breakthrough while working with a species of silicon-based crystalline beings. They found a way to share consciousness voluntarily, she reported excitedly. Brief, consensual merging for specific tasks, while maintaining distinct individual identities. It's everything the Meridian Collective claimed to be, but based on choice rather than compulsion. The discovery spread rapidly. Other species adapted the technique to their own biology and culture. A new form of civilization began to emerge, one that balanced the benefits of shared consciousness with the fundamental right to individual identity. Not all news was positive. Some freed beings, unable to cope with independence, took their own lives. Others formed isolated communes, voluntarily recreating small-scale versions of the collective. The Liberation Council struggled with difficult questions. How much should they intervene? When does assistance become interference? How do you help someone recover an identity that was stolen generations ago? Admiral Chen found herself spending more time as a diplomat than a military commander. We're not just dealing with the aftermath of victory, she told her staff during a rare quiet moment. We're midwives to a new galactic society, one that has to find its own way between absolute independence and necessary interconnection. 6 months after liberation, the first major success story emerged. The Proxima colony, a world of former Meridian agricultural specialists, held its first democratic election. The candidates included descendants of 12 different species, each campaigning with their own vision for the future. The quantum networks carried news of the election across former Meridian space, showing others that a new way was possible. As Chen watched the election results from her lunar office, Dr. Wilson joined her. "Did you ever imagine, when we were planning the virus, that we'd end up here? Not just fighting a war, but helping rebuild an entire civilization." Chen smiled slightly. "Humanity's greatest strength isn't our technology or our tactics. It's our experience with struggle. We know what it means to fight for identity, for freedom, for the right to choose our own path. Now we can help others do the same." The quantum displays showed thousands of worlds in various stages of recovery. Some still burned with conflict, others were taking their first steps toward independence, and a few shone as beacons of hope. The age of the collective was over, but the work of liberation had only begun. 1 year after Earth shattered the Meridian Collective, the galaxy pulsed with newfound energy. The Liberation Council headquarters on Luna had become the heart of an unprecedented experiment in interspecies cooperation. Representatives from over 1,000 freed worlds worked together, not through forced collective consciousness, but through choice and shared purpose. Admiral Chen stood at the Quantum Observatory, watching real-time feeds from across former Meridian space. Beside her, Ambassador Lizura, now the elected leader of her people's first independent government in millennia, studied the same data streams. "The Centauri Accord is ready for ratification," Lizura said, her opalescent skin shifting with subtle patterns that Chen had learned to read as hope. 300 species have already signed. More join daily. The accord represented something unprecedented. A framework for galactic cooperation that protected individual rights while enabling voluntary consciousness sharing. It incorporated lessons from Earth's varied political systems, wisdom from ancient freed species, and safeguards against any future attempt at forced integration. Dr. Patel's consciousness research had revolutionized understanding of sentient minds. "We've discovered something extraordinary," she reported to the council. "The Meridians were right about one thing. Consciousness can be shared, but they completely misunderstood the process. Forced integration creates a prison. Voluntary sharing creates something greater than the sum of its parts." The proof of her theory existed in the new hybrid communities sprouting across the galaxy. Species that had been absorbed into the collective were rediscovering their original cultures while building something new. The quantum networks, repurposed and secured, enabled translation and communication between wildly different forms of consciousness. But peace hadn't come easily. The last holdouts of the Meridian Loyalists had gathered in the Carina Nebula, led by High Commander Zextal. Their fraction of the collective consciousness, corrupted by isolation and fear, drove them to increasingly desperate acts. Commander Torres, leading the combined fleet of Earth and liberated worlds, approached the nebula with caution. Her ships carried Dr. Wilson's latest version of the restoration beam, modified to work at longer ranges. "We're not here to destroy them," she reminded her crews. "We're here to free them from what's left of the collective's control." The Battle of Carina would be remembered not for its destruction, but for its precision. The Allied fleet didn't fire a single conventional weapon. Instead, they penetrated the nebula's dust clouds with interwoven beams of quantum energy, systematically severing the Loyalists' connection to their corrupted collective. When Zextal's flagship finally fell silent, the commander himself requested contact. "I remember now," he told Torres, his voice shaking. "I remember who I was before the integration. We thought we were preserving consciousness, but we were destroying it. How do we atone for millions of years of theft?" The answer came from an unexpected source. The silicon beings of the Andromeda Arm had developed their voluntary consciousness sharing technique into something revolutionary. They could temporarily link minds with the traumatized Loyalists, helping them process their recovered memories and find a path to redemption. 1 year became 2, then 5. The galaxy transformed. The quantum networks that had once enslaved now connected worlds in voluntary cooperation. Species that had lost their identities to the collective rediscovered their ancient arts, philosophies, and sciences. New forms of music emerged, combining styles from across space and time. Hybrid technologies flourished as freed minds combined knowledge in ways the collective had never imagined. Earth's role evolved too. Humanities universities became centers for studying both recovered knowledge and new innovations. The Liberation Council transformed into the Galactic Cooperative, with Earth as one voice among many. Ships of the combined fleet carried both human and alien crews, their different perspectives creating tactical advantages the Meridian Collective could never have achieved. Admiral Chen, preparing to retire, made one final inspection tour of the transformed galaxy. On 1,000 worlds, she saw the fruits of liberation. Crystal cities where once enslaved beings now chose their own paths. Quantum academies where students from across the galaxy learned to share consciousness safely and voluntarily. Memorial gardens where the names of those lost to the collective were remembered. In the council chamber, now expanded to accommodate representatives from over 2,000 species, she gave her final address. 10 years ago, humanity faced a choice. We could submit to integration, fight purely for our own survival, or take on the responsibility of liberation. We chose the hardest path, not just to resist conquest, but to free others from slavery. She gestured to the assembled representatives, each unique in form and consciousness. Look at what that choice has created. Not the forced harmony of the collective, but a true unity born of diversity. We've proven that consciousness can be shared without being stolen, that cooperation doesn't require conformity, that the galaxy is stronger when every voice remains distinct while choosing to work together. As she stepped down from the podium, Dr. Patel approached with exciting news. The voluntary consciousness sharing technique had revealed something extraordinary, traces of species thought lost to the collective centuries ago. With careful work, there was hope of recovering more lost civilizations, restoring voices silenced by millennia of integration. The quantum displays showed a galaxy alive with possibility. Ships of 1,000 designs plied the star lanes. New worlds were being discovered and settled. The liberation virus had evolved into tools for healing and growth. The age of the collective was over, replaced not by chaos, but by something far more precious, genuine cooperation between free minds. In her final log entry as Admiral, Chen wrote, "Humanity's greatest contribution wasn't our technology or our military strength. It was our experience with both individuality and cooperation. Our understanding that true unity comes from choice, not force. We didn't just save ourselves from absorption. We helped birth a new way of existence. The galaxy will never be the same. And that's exactly as it should be."